It's important for us to note that in any routing protocol, default routes aren't created equal. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that when we look at what's going on in our environment, there are going to be different ways that we can generate default prefixes. Of the ways that we've been talking about up to this point have been involving RIP version 2, and we've been talking about the fact that we could just go under our routing process and use the default information originate command. Now that generates a default route, but that default route is going to be generated irregardless of whether or not there's an entry in the routing table for a default route, and it also is just going to be generated with no basic fundamental criteria, i.e. there's no conditional aspect to it. And that's what I want to talk about right now. I want to talk about the idea of conditional default routes. Let me double check, make sure that my console here is situated the way I want it, and it is. So here's the situation. What I want to do is I'm going to generate or advertise an idea of a default route on R1. Now the default prefix or the default route that I want to configure on R1 is going to be, again, just an all zeros prefix, 0.0.0.0/0, and ultimately it will be advertised out and up, and I will end up having a load balancing scenario on R22 whereby I think I can use serial 2/0 and serial 2/1 to reach the default prefix. Now what I want to do is I want to make this a conditional default route. And I'm going to say I want to make it conditional on the loopback address of R20 appearing in my RIB on R1. So that address, and we can't see it here, it's going to be 172.16.20.20. Now what I'm going to do is I want to cut over to R1 and see if that prefix is actually in my routing table. Show IP route, and I'm going to see 172.16.20.20, and there it is. It's actually in my routing table. Now what I'm going to do is I want to create a criteria by which I can design and deploy this conditional default route. And it's going to require a tool that we haven't spent much time talking about right now up to this point, referred to as a route map. Now in a route map I can actually create criteria that I want to do matching on. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to find myself in a situation right now where I'm going to be using an IP prefix list and a route map in unison with the default information originate command. So let's take a look and see what that's going to come and look like. Well, first what I want to do is I want to be able to match on that prefix that I was talking about. I want to be able to match on this prefix right here. And so long as this prefix is in my routing table on R1, I want to generate a default route. Should that prefix disappear from my routing table, I want to cease generating that default route. There is how we're defining this conditional state. So on the condition that the prefix 172.16.20/0 or .0/24 appears in my routing table is the criteria by which I'm going to generate this default route. Should it disappear, I want to stop. Now I'm going to match that using an IP prefix list. Now the way I want to do this, I want to say prefix list, and I'm going to say LO0 of R20. So the loopback 0 of R20, let's say sequence 10. And what I'm going to say is I'm going to permit, and I want to match on 172.16.20.0, specifically the /24 prefix, because that's what I know is being advertised to me. Now what I want to do is I want to create this route map idea. So when I create the route map, it's going to be route-map, and I'm going to say I want to track the LO0 interface of _R20. And I'm going to say permit 10. Now, how do I track it? Well, I'm going to use the match IP address feature, but I want to match on an IP address prefix list. So prefix -list and then list my name. Well, the name that I want to match on is going to be loopback underscore of underscore R20. And press enter. So now I have my route map. Do show route-map. We see I'm matching this prefix list, show IP prefix-list, and I can see the prefix is matching 172.16.20.0. So how do I deploy this? Well, I deploy it under my router process, so router rip. And what I want to say here is default-information originate. And what I want to do is I want to match on a route map, and that's one of the features, actually it's the only option I have here. I can say route map, and the route map that I want to match on is going to be this idea of track underscore LO 0 of R20. So let's plug that in there. And we'll hit enter. Let's go ahead and clear our process here. Clear IP route star. Now once this has been cleared, let's see if we're generating this loopback address. So let's go up to R2 and say show IP route and see if we have a static default route. We have a gateway of last resort. It's not a static, excuse me, but it is a RIP route that we're advertising, and it's coming from 10.1 to 10.11, which is Cat 1. So let's go over to Cat 1 and see what Cat 1 says. Show IP route. We can see the same prefix that's coming from R1. So we are generating it. Now, what I want to do is I want to go over to R1 and I'm going to say show IP route. And what I want to look at specifically here is going to be the route for 172.16.20.0. And we see that it's in the routing table. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to R20 and I'm going to go to that interface, show IP interface brief, assigned. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say I want to disable this loopback 0 interface. So config T interface LO0 shut. Now that should stop that prefix from being advertised. Let's cut over to R1, show IP route 172.16.20.0. It's no longer in my routing table. So now the question is R1 going to advertise that loopback prefix? So show IP route, and let's see what we have in the table here. And notice now on R2, nor on Cat 1, show IP route 0000, I have nothing in my routing table. Now the moment I come back over to R10 and say no shut and bring that interface back up, what we should ultimately start seeing here is, first of all, it'll return to the routing table on R1. Let's give it some time. Make sure I execute the right command on 20. No shut, interface is up. There it is in my routing table. Now that I have it in my routing table, show IP route 0000, and we now have it in our table, and it's also being advertised to us from Cat 1. When we go to Cat 1, execute the same command, and it's being advertised from R1. So this illustrates exactly what goes into the idea of a conditional default route. Now another criteria is that we also have the ability to be able to use reliability. Now, being able to track reliability with regard to reachability on an interface means I have actual reachability information, not just the fact that it's in my routing table. Right now, all we're doing is we're looking at our routing table using that IP prefix list, and as long as we see the prefix that we specified, we're going to generate the default route. The moment that address disappears, that's going to cause an issue with regard to us being able to create that default route. But it has absolutely nothing to do with reachability. The moment we start looking at reliability in default routes, then what we're going to do is we're going to find ourselves identifying a new tool. We've talked about route maps, we've talked about the default information command, we've talked about IP prefix lists. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about something called an IP SLA, an IP service level agreement. And we'll do that in the next video. I'll see you guys there. Bye-bye.